there are so many boundaries that get blurred. You know, you can start with normal depression, normal anxiety. Everybody's got that. If you don't have it, there's something wrong with you. And I really mean that. It is part of being a human being. It would be like saying, I'm a human being and I never experience pain.
I'm never sad. I'm never low. I'm never questioning.
If you don't, there really is something wrong with your brain. You're probably in a vegetative state. Hi, my name's Dr. Chris Palmer. I am a psychiatrist at Harvard Medical School and the author of a book, Brain Energy. I am here today to talk on Ever Forward Radio about the brain energy theory of mental illness, which helps us understand the root cause of mental illness. It helps us understand the connections between physical health and mental health. And most importantly, it gives people motivation and tools and empowerment to actually get better.
Welcome, Chris, of course. But my kind of kickoff I wanted to dive into was, really set the stage for us. What is the state of the current mental health field in America? What are we doing? How are we going about such a disservice? And you're kind of already in there.
So the real answer is that mental disorders are increasing in prevalence. And they are now the leading cause of disability in the United States and on the planet. And although we have treatments that work, we do have pills and we do have psychotherapies and we have electroconvulsive therapy and transcranial magnetic stimulation. And we've got ketamine injections. And the new kid on the block is psychedelics. We've got all of these treatments. We've even got brain surgery and we've got electrode implants. Despite all of those treatments, mental disorders are the leading cause of disability on the planet. And it's not because people aren't getting treatment. It's because our treatments fail to work for far too many people. That is the current state of the mental health field.
It's one of those things that it's like we know it to be true. Maybe I'm unique and kind of just have an ear to a different street, I guess. Mental health for me personally has been on the radar and part of such necessary work to get my life back for the last several years. But I also, therefore, have been leaning into it more professionally. And I have the same experiences. I see how much of a disservice is being done. There are a lot of great things being done. If we look for the negative, we can find the negative. If we look for the positive, we can find the positive. But I have to say this out loud. I'm so happy to hear someone like yourself who is on the clinical side of it all, really the day in, day out trenches, agreeing of how much of a shitty job we are doing as a society and as medical professionals for people's mental health. It's just kind of like the sad truth that everyone seems to be sweeping under the rug.
Yeah. And they sweep it under the rug because no one knows what to do. Because at the end of the day, no one knows what causes mental illness. It's just a big mystery. It's too complicated. It's the brain. Brain's so complicated. Nobody can figure it out. It's just an overwhelming problem. And the mental health professionals who are doing this work, the researchers who are doing this work, they are not bad people. I am here to say that clearly and unequivocally. They are not bad people. They are not evil. They are not motivated by money. They are not trying to hurt people. The ones that I know desperately want to help. They desperately care about people. Most of the people who go into the mental health field don't do that lightly. It's stigmatized to have a mental illness. It's also stigmatized to be a mental health professional for the most part. Everybody's like, why do you want to work with crazy people? And you're going to be one of those incompetent people who doesn't do anything. In medical school, I was asked by multiple professors, why do you want to waste your talent on that field?
Wow.
Don't you want to be a real doctor? So the people in the field care.
Yeah.
But up until now, nobody has been able to connect all of the dots of the mental illness puzzle. And so nobody's been able to say what causes it. So we're shooting in the dark. We develop these pills, almost all of them discovered through serendipity alone. The first antipsychotic was actually being developed as an anesthetic. We're trying to put people to sleep. And they say, oh, this isn't good. This would be a good medicine for the crazy people. This might put them to sleep. Instead of us chaining them to a wall, maybe we could just give them this pill and that'll just sedate them.
Band-Aid, 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 Band-Aid.
And that's what we do. Lots of Band-Aids. And there's nothing wrong with Band-Aids. When you're hemorrhaging, bleeding out, a Band-Aid's better than nothing. I mean, I want to be clear. A Band-Aid is better than nothing.
Over some talk therapy in that given moment for sure.
But we're not solving the problem. We're not healing people. We're not restoring their mental health. We're not restoring their lives.
You said crazy a couple times already. And I know, I'm assuming here, you're kind of pulling from what other people are saying. And it immediately, I feel like that word associated in the same sentence, used in the same sentence as mental health, has really kind of turned into like a little bit of a trigger for me. And maybe I'm a little bit biased, but my wife is a family nurse practitioner, runs a mental health clinic, which I want to get into later in the interview. It's ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, actually. And for a couple of years now, and ever since, she has been just so invested in this work of mental health, helping people at their worst. Hearing crazy in mental health has just really irked me so much. And it has even been a mirror to me in the past of my own ignorance and maybe even insensitivity before I even was making mental health my own priority, of like how harshly and incorrectly we use that word. My question for you is, would you say maybe a way for us to spearhead changing this whole mental health field in America professionally, but even just in society, does it start with our vocabulary around it? Does it start with not using certain words, educating ourselves around proper terminology? Like with any, I think, big movement we want to have for society, does it start with our language and vernacular around it? Is that really the core, the grassroots movement, or are we even too far gone there?
It's interesting because I've gone through different phases in my career. I've certainly had phases in my life and my career where I cringed at the word crazy. I thought it was like the most cruel thing you could say to a human being who's clearly medically ill. There's something medically wrong with them. It would be like making fun of somebody who has an infection and saying, look at you, look at your skin. Oh, you're getting all sweaty and hot. Oh, look at you. You must be possessed by the devil. It is akin to that almost. And that's the way I genuinely feel. These people have a medical problem. And yet society, for the most part, and even the medical profession, doesn't see it that way. And I feel very strongly about fighting the stigma. And I don't know for sure what the right answer is. Everybody's got to have strong opinions one way or another. You just expressed your opinion. Like, we should not be saying those words. Those words should be taboo. Let's be politically correct with mental health. Let's not use those words. I've given talks recently on mental health, on mental illness, actually, mental illness. And I was told, don't use the word illness. Use the word health. Mental health challenges. I've been kind of an activist in various things over the years, over my life. Sometimes using the words that everyone's thinking is the way to actually create change. Because if you don't say the word, you won't actually begin to connect with people, and you won't actually be able to change their mind.
It won't land in the way it needs to probably develop that initial, at least, traction, right?
By my using the word crazy, I'm saying if that's what's going on in your head, I want to have a conversation with you.
Okay.
Let's talk about the crazy homeless people outside. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about the people mumbling to themselves who stink and yell and act crazy and they're scary. Let's talk about them. And if I don't give people permission to use the word crazy, we're not going to have an authentic conversation.
Okay.
They're going to feel like I'm not allowed to talk to you about what I'm really thinking. And so, again, you and many others, maybe millions of others, maybe everyone watching this podcast is going to think, F you, Chris Palmer. How dare you? Who do you think you are? Like, using those words. You can't be using those words. You have no right to use those words. Don't be denigrating.
I welcome difference of opinion.
Don't be denigrating these people. Like you said, they have medical illnesses. Why are you being mean to them? I'm not trying to be mean to them. I'm not saying those words for the people with the illnesses. I'm saying those words for the people, the overwhelming majority of people, more than 50% of the population, who thinks those words. Because we need them to understand these are medical problems with the brain, and they deserve compassion, and they deserve effective solutions.
I love that answer. And if one other thing I'll say on this topic is because mental health work has been so necessary for me and a part of my health and wellness the last several years, like really diving in, I've gone through a lot of therapies and different modalities, specifically treating mental health, that when I share gets used in the same sentence as, oh, you mean like crazy people? Which makes it's beyond like a trigger or a cringe, because for me, then it's like, well, I haven't told you yet, but I went through the same therapy. I associated to these experiences and have had these thoughts and have had these repercussions due to poor mental health, untreated, unrespected mental health for so long. But I'm like, I don't think I'm crazy. I don't associate myself to being crazy. But by just associating myself with mental health work, outside looking in, a lot of people immediately just say crazy.
And the reality is nobody thinks they're crazy.
Ain't that the truth?
Even the ones who everybody else looking at them would say, yeah, that person's crazy. They don't think they're crazy. Every now and then people will have insight that maybe their thoughts, their behaviors are off or odd. But the overwhelming majority of time, it feels normal and natural to them. They think that something is happening to them that isn't happening to others.
Right, yeah.
Divine intervention or alien intervention or spirit possession or something. They think something is happening, that they have a gift, that they have a curse, they have something, and that's why they're having these experiences. It's really interesting because if you actually work on an inpatient psychiatric unit, you can sometimes have more than one person who thinks they're the next Messiah.
I've heard, yeah, and I have not worked on a psychiatric unit. So.
And then the messiahs are all accusing each other of being crazy, but of course they aren't crazy. They themselves,
false idol.
They themselves are the true messiah, and the other ones are clearly crazy and belong there. So mental illness is a strange, complex thing to treat. And there are so many boundaries that get blurred. You can start with normal depression, normal anxiety. Everybody's got that. If you don't have it, there's something wrong with you. And I really mean that. It is part of being a human being. It would be like saying, I'm a human being and I never experience pain.
I'm never sad. I'm never low. I'm never questioning.
If you don't, there really is something wrong with your brain. You're probably in a vegetative state. So everybody has normal depression and anxiety. But then we have people who are severely stressed or traumatized. or put in life-threatening situations, soldiers, first responders, they have mental symptoms. Though I don't think those are brain disorders, not on the battlefield. If they're on the battlefield and having a panic attack, that's not a mental disorder. That's a normal reaction to getting killed or almost getting killed,
to get killed
or not even wanting to get. I mean, that is a normal reaction. If you see people shooting at you, if you see your best friend in the world bleeding to death, what are you supposed to do? You're just supposed to stay calm, cool, and collected, and like, come on, like that's just not even realistic. It lacks all common sense. And yeah, people will say, well, the psychiatry wouldn't label those people with a disorder right now. But, we've got a situation going on in the world. There are all these people in Ukraine right now who are having symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's been going on for more than 2 months because their country's been attacked for more than 2 months. And if you look at DSM-5 TR, they all have mental disorders. They have brain disorders. That is what our field says. And that is just completely effed up.
How so?
Why would we say they have a disorder? If your city is being bombed on a regular basis, are you supposed to be sleeping soundly 8 hours every night? Is that a normal human protective reaction to sleep soundly 8 hours every night? I'm here to just insert a little common sense in the mental health field saying, no, actually the normal human reaction is to not sleep, to have just, a very short trigger to wake up at the slightest sound. If you hear somebody turning the doorknob, coming into your room, you should be waking up.
You're on alert, yeah.
Because you don't know who that person is. And those are normal human reactions. They take a huge toll on people, and they can lead to something that I call mental illness. But I don't think those in and of themselves are brain disorders. It's not that people don't deserve help. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying those people don't deserve help. And then the third category are people who have brain disorders. So you can be sitting in the comfort of your home, doing nothing threatening, not even thinking any scary thoughts, and out of the blue get overwhelmed with fear and panic and anxiety and think you're having a heart attack. That is a brain disorder. Your brain is firing the panic system or the anxiety system when it should not be firing. That is not serving a useful purpose. It is not doing anything beneficial to that human being other than cause suffering, which is not beneficial. So I would, right now we don't distinguish those things. And the reason those things need to be distinguished is because the treatments are very different. If you're treating a soldier on the battlefield, the goal is not to sedate him and stop his symptoms. You're going to get that guy killed if you do. You're not doing that guy any favors.
I got to throw a tourniquet on his leg. I got to call for cover fire and get him medevaced out of there. That's the goal. And I
mean, there are numerous goals. So let's do that. Politicians, let's stop the effing war. Like, why are we having war? Why are people getting slaughtered? Why are human beings getting threatened? Like, can't you politicians solve this problem another way? Isn't there another way? If people are getting overwhelmed and clearly not going to be helping the service, let's get them out of there and, just recognize this person is not useful on the battlefield. They are a liability on the battlefield. They're going to get themselves and others killed. Let's put them to use some other way. Maybe they can work in some factory or something or do something else. Let's heal them, get them to safety, get them sleep, maybe use pills then when we know they're really safe. But that person sitting on the sofa in the comfort of their home who's having panic attacks several times a day and is overwhelmed with grief, that brain disorder needs a very different treatment. That person doesn't need to be evacuated anywhere. That person doesn't need to be reassigned somewhere. They have a physiological disorder with their brain, and we need to treat it. And the treatments are very different. And right now, our field does not distinguish those things. We say that anyone who's having unusual, persistent anxiety has a brain disorder. And so you've got these clinicians armed with that model, just doling out pills. With no assessment for, do I need to do a psychosocial intervention with this person? Or if we get to the metabolic theory of mental illness, do I need to do a metabolic intervention with this person?
Which we'll get there. Absolutely. I love how you're already kind of bringing in, connecting all these dots. I want to kind of bring it back a little bit. We were talking about mental health, mental illness, but really, especially in the book here, Brain Energy, you guys definitely check it out and have it linked for you down in the show notes. It's kind of how you kick things off in a big way is diving into the connections between, excuse me, mental disorders and then some physical ones, such as obesity, diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, pain disorders, Alzheimer's, and even epilepsy. Are you saying that these are in fact caused by mental disorders, or is it the other way around?
It's both.
It's both.
What I'm saying is that mental health and physical health are inseparable. We need to start there.
Okay.
The brain is part of the body. At the end of the day, what I'm really saying is all of these are metabolic disorders. They are all symptoms of metabolic problems in the human body. A lot of people struggle, even scientists struggle. Well, what does that mean? Metabolic problem. When I say that, a lot of people are like, yeah, that kind of sounds right. And they don't think much of it.
Yeah.
But even the scientists, when they hear that, they're like, well, I can't really argue with I can't argue with that, but what does that mean? And in my mind, so my definition of a metabolic disorder is that the cells, some cells somewhere in your body, maybe all of them, maybe just a handful of them in one location, do not have adequate, healthy mitochondria.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that is the definition of a metabolic problem. Because mitochondria are the master regulators of metabolism. And if you have enough of them and they are healthy in a cell, the cell will function properly. You can think of mitochondria as the workers in a cell. And so if the workforce is decreased, if you've got a factory that's supposed to be producing 1,000 widgets a day, and you've only got a workforce that really allows that factory to produce 200 widgets a day, those workers are going to be strained and stressed, and they're not going to be able to keep up with demand, and that cell is not going to be performing 1,000 widgets a day. And it's really that simple. And yet, if you do a deep, deep dive into the science on any aspect of that, it all lines up. That's the beauty of the theory.
It reminds me of the section I had marked you have this whole chapter around magnificent mitochondria. And you talk about how the question you pose is, but what controls metabolism? How do food and oxygen know where to go? What changes the metabolic rate in various cells? What makes some cells slow down while others go faster? What is driving the intricate network of the human body? A lot of people would say the brain. You even make that point, but we're saying it's deeper than that. It's more than that. What is the driving force behind every system in the body, every function in the body? At the core, it's this mitochondrial health. And if we can focus on that, if I'm hearing you correctly in the book, if we can really just go straight to the source there and work on that, is that like we need to start there. Therefore, the ripple effect is going to be what we're after eventually, treating these mental illnesses. We talk about these drivers and making the cells stop and go. Is that really what it's all about? Is we need to be focusing on mitochondrial health?
If I was to give one simplistic answer, I would say two things. We need to focus on mitochondrial health first and foremost, because if all of the cells in the human body have sufficient mitochondria and they are healthy, that human body will be performing optimally. Mm-hmm. The humans who are most likely to have that situation are infants, healthy infants.
How so?
That's just the way life works.
Nothing else has deteriorated them.
New living organisms are primed to grow and primed to thrive. And youth has more healthy mitochondria than aging. And that makes sense. So youth in general, it's not like all youth are born perfectly healthy and normally functioning. All sorts of things can go wrong.
Majority speaking, humans in that stage, we're good to go.
But the majority of humans, yes, we're good to go. But the other thing, though, that's one huge bucket, internal to the organism, internal to the human person. The second is environment. And environment means that you have to have adequate and appropriate food, water, shelter, temperature, light, relationships, purpose in your community, purpose in your life, a sense of connection. All of those things are from the environment. They are impacting mitochondrial function and number of mitochondria. We've got direct evidence for all of those.
Wow.
They are also impacting overall metabolism in the organism. And so any one of those factors, if any one of those factors is absent or insufficient or inappropriate, the organism will fail to thrive and will become sick very quickly. So if we go back to those infants, again, yes, there are infants who have cancer. Yes, there are infants who have developmental abnormalities. Yes, there are infants who have, all sorts of seizures, other things. So it's not that 100% of infants are 100% healthy. And yet, if you look at the primary driver of poor health in infants, it's the environment. It's not their mitochondria.
More external than internal at that
It's not their mitochondria. It's their environment. It's the parent who's not paying attention. It's not feeding them enough food. It's being abused and neglected and traumatized. It's being left in a hot car with the windows up with no regard for the effect of temperature on human metabolism.
Even would you say like noise pollution, like loud noises, music, things like that, just like as so many external stimuli just bombarding a creature that has not yet developed the ability to kind of like be as sensitive as it should or be able to remove itself.
Yes, those things are likely. I mean, the evidence for everything that I just said, barring that last one that you just offered, the evidence is overwhelming, and it's just common sense. Everybody, you leave a kid in a hot car,
Bad.
And, they die. They die. Why are they dying? They're not dying because they had unhealthy mitochondria prior to that event.
Yeah.
They're dying because the environment became hostile to their mitochondria. Their environment became hostile to metabolism. Death is the absence of metabolism. That is what death is.
That is such a profound statement, but so like obvious, yes.
That 1 second after you officially die, you still have your cells. You still have the structure. The complicated structure of your brain is still intact. You still have DNA in your nucleus. You've still got everything. The one thing you don't have is energy from metabolism. That is what you don't have. And now you are dead. Energy from metabolism is a requirement for life. That's why if you get suffocated, you die very quickly because oxygen is required by mitochondria. Nothing else in the body uses oxygen. It's mitochondria and only mitochondria. Suffocation is a mitochondrial problem.
It's not because I'm running out of breath. It's deeper than that.
It's deeper than that. You have to go to the root source. And so at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that all mental disorders, again, I'm not talking normal anxiety. I'm not talking soldiers on a battlefield who are panicking and stressed. Soldiers still need help, even if they're on the battlefield. Even if they don't have a brain disorder, they still need help. I'm not saying they don't need help, folks. So let's help them out. Yeah. Even normal people with normal anxiety, they could use a little support. That's not bad.
We could all use a lifeline.
I'm not trying to say these people don't need psychotherapy or can't benefit from a little human connection or sympathy or whatever. But people have brain disorders. What I'm saying is the only way to understand why their brains are malfunctioning, the only way is to go to the root cause. And the root cause is huge. Mitochondria and metabolism, huge. They are the defining forces of living organisms. So in some way, no scientist could ever say that's incorrect.
Right.
But what I'm arguing with the theory is that it is the only way to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together.
It kind of reminds me of, for lack of a better term here, kind of starting with a handicap. If two people are going to the starting line of a race and one is more conditioned, has been actually preparing for it, training for it, and the other person is literally just getting off the couch, is that kind of the analogy here we're looking at? Is it's like you're literally starting off in a detriment compared to somebody else?
That is definitely true. So I think there are two aspects of it. So one is that they are deconditioned and they just need to work hard and get conditioned. That's the way most people are going to think about this problem and look at that problem.
Which I guess being deconditioned is not the same thing as in poor metabolic health. Would you say?
Well, let's see. I mean, that's the thing. I think if I asked the masses, they would say yes.
Okay.
The majority of people would say yes. Poor metabolic health, deconditioned are the same thing. And a lot of people believe it is a problem of willpower. That plain and simple. It is a willpower problem. If this person just sucked it up,
if they
did what they were supposed to do, if they want to get better, they just need to work get off your ass, stop eating your bonbons on your couch and watching TV, pull yourself away. And we're saying this like with a lot of disdain. Pull yourself away from your bonbons and work.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to hurt a little. Don't whine and complain about that. Just do it. Just do it. Well, that's like a slogan, isn't it? Nike. Just do it. The challenge is that not only is a lot of that stuff going on, when somebody is in poor metabolic health, what I'm arguing is that the problem is more complicated than that.
Fair enough. Okay.
And the problem is that when those people begin to exercise, we know this at the cellular level, they are actually causing sometimes more harm than good initially.
Yeah.
And so you and I get a high from exercise right now. I don't know that you do. I'm just assuming you do. If you're really in fitness, I'm assuming you do.
It gets me through.
I do too.
Yeah.
No, and when I don't do it, I feel like shit. And then I want to do it. I crave it. I'm like, the only way I know to make myself feel better is to get to a gym or go for a run or just start doing push-ups right here or something. I've got to do something. I have to move. I have to strain myself in order to feel better. I'm there. I wasn't always there. I was still totally not
It
an
takes work
athlete.
to get there for all of us. Yeah,
we could talk about that, but I was not an athlete growing up. But what I'm saying is that people who are in poor metabolic or mental health, number one, their brain function is impaired and it impairs their motivation. Number two, their muscle function is impaired. Their muscles literally do not have enough ATP. Literally not enough. You would think they would have a lot of ATP because they're fat.
Well, the less muscle you have, the more adipose tissue you have. Your ATP is definitely down the tubes.
It's down the tubes, but a lot of people wouldn't think that. They would think, well, you were just eating all that. You were just eating all that food. You were just eating all that food. You should have plenty of energy. And this is where we then conclude it's a willpower problem because you have to have a lot of energy. Look at how much you just ate.
It's literally just sitting on you, waiting to be tapped into.
Yes.
In theory.
But the challenge, the research, the science tells us actually those people have a metabolic problem mobilizing that fat.
Of course.
And they've got a metabolic problem in their muscles. Their muscles literally do not have as much ATP as your muscles or my muscles have. And that makes moving those muscles painful and more difficult. It also means that those muscles are going to be stressed much earlier in the process, and that those people are going to experience soreness and pain at a level that you and I probably haven't experienced in years.
That's why most beginners in physical activity, exercise, are the ones that are in the most amount of pain, that complain the most. And, I think back to so many people I used to work with. Those are the ones I had to spend so much more extra time with in motivation, in accountability, in reminders, because they're like, this is the worst. This is terrible. It's just, you have to break through that plateau.
You have to break through it. I believe the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we tell other people actually really matter.
Yes. Yes.
And when that person that you just described is being told they're lazy, and when they're telling that to themselves because they've heard it a million times and they really believe it, I am just a lazy, no good loser. That's what I am. That Chase guy, he's trying to get me to exercise. He's really nice. I know he means well. But he doesn't know what he's up against. He's up against a lazy, no good loser. I'm not worth saving.
Wow.
He shouldn't be spending all his time and energy on me because I'm a loser. I'll just stop going. He should help somebody who really wants to get better. He should help someone else. That, I think, is the predominant story going on in probably over 1 billion people's minds. That is what they're telling themselves. That's what they're hearing from family and friends. Unfortunately, that's what they're hearing from healthcare professionals. That's what they're hearing from some of their fitness trainers and coaches. Are those implications? You're a lazy, no good loser.
Which, for
Stop.
the record, I never said that.
But a lot of people are thinking it.
Sure.
And again, back to my anti-stigma campaign, you gotta say it. You gotta say it if we're gonna fight it. And what I'm arguing is that if we can provide a different narrative based on science and evidence and like cell biology, if we can provide a different narrative, that alone may help people recover. That alone may help that person stick with it. That alone might help the fitness trainer not give up on that person so easily, not get so frustrated with that person. If that fitness trainer understands the reason you're complaining and whining after that pathetic workout you just did yesterday. So pathetic workout, didn't even do what the trainer asked them to do. And the next day they're whining and complaining, my muscles, I can't move them. I can barely move. If that person is concluding, I am a no good loser, I'm pathetic, I give up. If the trainer is thinking, you're a no good loser, you're pathetic.
Which I'm sure some do.
You're complaining to me about that workout that you really didn't even do yesterday. If instead both of those people can say, whoa, I must have a really effed up metabolism. Oh my
damn mitochondria.
Oh my God. This is like a signal that I am really sick. Not I'm really lazy. I'm really sick. I am metabolically sick. And I've got some work to do. I have a responsibility to myself to fix this problem. And then if the trainer and the individual can develop a more reasonable, effective plan, I think that person may have a fighting chance.
Absolutely.
And that effective plan may be, look, we push too far. If you can't move today, I'm sorry. As your fitness trainer, I apologize. I didn't know how sick you were. But now we know how sick you are. And we need to really scale down the workout. We can't have you the next day not being able to move. Like, that's not acceptable. But you're not giving up. I'm not giving up. Again, if you come away from that conversation with, I'm just a loser, the person has no motivation to go back. Who wants to go back and be a big loser again? If you conclude instead from that same evidence, if you conclude instead you're really, really sick, and I can develop a treatment plan to help you improve your metabolic health.
Yeah.
That person's going to think, what do you mean I'm really, really sick? Your pain and soreness today are giving us valuable information about how sick you are. And I'm paying attention. I want you to pay attention. We need to understand what that means. And now let's develop an effective treatment plan. For me at least, even just hearing me say that conversation out loud, I'm going to be so much more motivated. If somebody says, you're really sick, I feel bad for you. Oh my God, but I can help you. I'm going to be like, really? Oh, wow. Oh, okay, I'll take your help. I thought I was just a loser. And you're telling me this, I'm not a loser, that I'm really sick. You almost feel sorry for me. I just thought I was a loser and deserved to be punished, but now I'm starting to feel sorry for myself too. But I don't want to just sit around and feel sorry for myself. I want to get better. If you got to
Sir, I think I love what you're saying. And I definitely think, and I'm reflecting back on like clinically when I was going through experiences like this, but in real life and even just my own struggles over the years of call it lack of motivation, call it sickness, call it great metabolic health. I think, doesn't there have to be kind of like this sweet spot, or is it so individualistic when it comes to what you're saying and when we need to kind of go the other route of, you know what, we just need to tap into our inner Jocko and pull a get after it kind of thing. Because I've seen so many instances where people, when you explain to them, the doctor, the coach, the authority, whoever in this situation goes, all right, we need to focus on getting you well, nutritionally, metabolically, so that the physical stuff is more likely to happen and doesn't hurt as much. I've seen in some instances, people will then latch on too much to that. They'll go, I'm not unmotivated. It's I actually have an illness, a disease. I'm in this other bucket. Then they kind of latch onto that. Oh, I can't exercise. I don't need to motivate myself for all these other reasons because I found out I'm in poor metabolic health. I've got diabetes. I feel like people sometimes will latch more onto that, turn that into an excuse, and they just kind of like dig themselves even more literally a grave.
And so you're absolutely right. And so it's all about the messaging and the entire message. So I would never say to a diabetic, you've got an excuse to not exercise.
Right.
I would actually say well, if they hear it, I'm going to quickly correct it. And I'm going to say, as a diabetic, you have a choice right now. Here and now, you have a choice. You can go to your doctor and get more pills, more insulin shots, and you can go to a path toward, progressive illness, possible, more and more compromise in terms of your physical and mental abilities. You're on a path to Alzheimer's disease. You're on a path to serious mental illness. You're on a path to serious physical disabilities, liver failure, kidney failure,
like if you think you can't work out now because of your diabetes, try doing it later when you have Alzheimer's.
That's your choice.
Yeah.
So if you're saying that, because you've got an illness, you are absolved of any responsibility to do anything for yourself, well, then, yeah, you can. Do you want to be admitted to the nursing home now? Shall we just preempt it all? They'll take care of you there. We'll strap you in a bed. Nurses will come and feed you 3 times a day. We'll call it a day. Let's just cut to the chase. Let's just go right for the nursing home. Or do you want to take responsibility for your health and fight this effing illness?
And that's part of the narrative I hear you're so pushing for, and I support. It's explanation, not excuse.
Not excuse at all. Not excuse to not do it, but excuse to modify the treatment and a different narrative. If the narrative is I am a big, fat, lazy loser, that person is going to live up to that narrative. We must change that narrative. And the narrative cannot be you need to be able to run a 5K and not be sore the next day. That's too much, too fast. That's unrealistic for the diabetic person who hasn't run in 10 years. It's not realistic. So my approach essentially kind of combines compassion and understanding and patience with boot camp. and I like to toggle between both.
Then you'll fit very well out here in LA. I think I've been to one of those retreats. We've kind of said it, but I would love to ask you directly this theory you have, of explanation, not excuse, and kind of the work you're here to do, the brain energy theory. Can you kind of clearly define that for us now? How do you define it? How do you describe it? We've been talking a lot about it.
The brain energy theory. The sound bite is that mental disorders are metabolic disorders of the brain. So I'm talking, again, mental disorders, not mental experiences. It just, because again, people, Chris Palmer, people who are abused, are you saying that they have, a metabolic problem in their brain? What I'm saying is that they are having normal human reactions that impact their metabolism.
Can turn into metabolic problems, absolutely.
Mental disorders are metabolic disorders of the brain. What does that mean? It means that cells somewhere in that person's brain, maybe throughout the brain, maybe specific to specific regions, it's going to be different in different people. Cells somewhere in that person's brain are metabolically compromised. What does that mean? It means they don't have enough healthy mitochondria. That's what that means. Plain and simple. Enough healthy mitochondria. When a cell does not have enough healthy mitochondria, it begins to malfunction. That malfunction results in symptoms of what we call mental illness.
Wow.
That malfunction can also result in symptoms of what we call neurological disorders, like epilepsy and Alzheimer's disease are the two examples I came back to time and again throughout the book. And to kind of solidify the theory, The nutshell overarching theory is that there are 5 broad consequences of mitochondrial dysfunction or metabolic dysfunction in cells. There are 2 consequences. All 5 matter. Those 5 consequences, for the record, are only listed and outlined in Brain Energy. They have never been published by anyone else in any academic journal, in any paper, in any book, not that I've ever seen. This is a unique theory that integrates everything. If you ask researchers, they're going to say, duh. It's like it was hiding in plain sight. Why didn't somebody delineate this? I kind of sort of knew that. I know a lot of them are going to say, I kind of sort of knew that. And I'm going to say, well, why didn't you write it up then?
Yeah.
Why didn't you come up with this theory? Why aren't you promoting this theory? Why aren't you talking about the metabolic basis of mental illness and all of the dramatic implications it has for some of our current treatments? 5 consequences. They can help us understand things like autism. Development, neurodevelopment is important. Metabolism and mitochondrial function are important. So when I say mental disorders or metabolic disorders, I'm going to back up and I'll come back to these 5. But when I say mental disorders or metabolic disorders, a lot of people think they know what I'm saying. Mental disorders are because people are lazy slobs eating a bad diet. That's not at all what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying. Not at all. Lots of things can cause metabolic problems in a cell. Some of them, in fact, are related to diet and to exercise, but also sleep, substance use, toxin exposure, and also things that are beyond anyone's control. A viral infection like COVID. You get an infection like COVID and you might develop metabolic and mitochondrial dysfunction, and that can result in symptoms that we call long COVID that result in all sorts of mental and neurological symptoms. That's not somebody being lazy. You're a very fit, committed human being. You could get that. And your metabolism and mitochondria could be decimated in a matter of days or weeks.
I've known people over the last couple of years that's unfortunately been the case.
So when I say mental disorders or metabolic disorders, it is way beyond diet, but diet is an important part. So I'm not going to back down from diet as a therapeutic strategy or diet as a possible cause, but it is by no means the only cause. And we need to move beyond thinking about metabolism as a diet issue only, because it's not a diet issue only. It's much more than diet.
Which is also one of the other biggest takeaways for me in the book was just this, I don't know, I would say me personally, like radically new concept, but just the way that you defined it, described it, and applied it to everything else. I'm just like, oh, wow, yes, there's a whole nother world to metabolic health that I didn't even think of beyond the obvious. And I think a lot of people are in that boat. Not that we're wrong, but it's just that and.
Absolutely. It's that and that's what I'm hoping this theory will do, is it will expand people's kind of universe, expand people's understanding of the overarching problem and all of the different things that can go into it. But what I'm really hoping is that once people really understand that, it will empower people to take control and regain their health. So coming back to the 5, so autism is related to metabolism and mitochondria, believe it or not. Am I saying all autistic people are following a bad diet? No, I'm not. People with autism have a neurodevelopmental disorder. Something went wrong with mom's metabolism or that child's metabolism early in life. Could it be related to diet? Sure. Could it be related to a viral infection? Absolutely. We've got an abundance of evidence on that. Could it be related to genetics or epigenetics? Yes. It can be related to all of those things, but it is a neurodevelopmental issue that is not anyone's fault. that can result in what we call mental symptoms. Two other consequences, metabolic dysfunction, mitochondrial dysfunction can cause maintenance problems in cells. It can cause cells to shrink and die. All of those help us understand many aspects of mental illness and both mental and physical health. The two key consequences of mitochondrial or metabolic dysfunction in cells is that cells become underactive or overactive. And when cells are underactive or overactive, that helps us understand different symptoms. And essentially, in a nutshell, that is the easiest way to understand mental illness. Parts of the brain are becoming underactive or overactive. And when those parts of the brain are underactive or overactive, it results in symptoms that we call mental illness, whether it's ADHD or depression or panic disorder or bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. But once you understand the big picture, again, it empowers people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's the necessity to dive deep into each puzzle piece, but the greater necessity to look at the entire picture. Like it's kind of analogy you were making earlier. We can get so bogged down in the details of making sure this puzzle piece, whatever component of illness, of health we're looking at on our own or with a medical provider, is as efficient as possible, or just trying to understand what's wrong with it as much. But like, it is always a part of another system. It is always a part of the whole. So it's the necessity to kind of have both here. Absolutely.
And I've alluded to a few examples. People sometimes say, so Chris Palmer, are you saying you're curing mental illness? The answer unequivocally is no. I'm not saying I'm curing mental illness. Mental illness is metabolic dysfunction or metabolic failure in the brain. Metabolic dysfunction is a consequence of either mitochondrial dysfunction or environment. An environment could be COVID. Environment could be freezing to death. Environment could be heat stroke or heat exhaustion. Environment could be malnutrition or overnutrition. Lots of things can happen in the environment. And so can I really say I'm curing it? No, because in order to say you're curing a metabolic problem would really, in essence, be saying I'm producing immortality and perpetual perpetual health and wellness.
Yeah.
So anyone who says they can cure a metabolic disorder is really naive or lying, because to cure means that person will in perpetuity maintain their metabolic health.
And never have to deal with that same problem again.
And the sad reality is our metabolism will decline across the board. Every human being, metabolism will decline unless they are abruptly killed. If a car runs over you and it's pretty quick, I guess that's a rapid decline in metabolism.
Yeah.
But our metabolism will decline and eventually fail, and that is called death. And so can I prevent all mental illness? Like some people are like, oh, how can we prevent all Alzheimer's disease? I think it's really silly. We can't. Can we prolong health? Yes. Can we make the window of health longer? Yes. Can we guarantee that we'll never have another case of Alzheimer's disease? Never. Never. That day will never come unless somebody figures out how to make all human beings immortal and perpetually healthy. And I don't predict that ever happening.
But definitely by understanding what feeds poor metabolic health and hopefully thwarting it or getting in front of it as much as possible, we can begin to at least try to get ahead of it as much as possible, right? We might not actually get to the cure, but these are the necessary steps in medicine and in real life to understand disease and poor health and mitigate risk as much as possible and reduce all those contributing factors.
Absolutely. So the thing that I am passionate about and committed to doing is helping people achieve and maximize their health, both physical health and mental health, and prolonging the duration of that state.
I can get on board with that.
But that's not a cure. So I say this because people are like, so Chris Palmer, if I do the keto diet because I've done a lot of work on the keto diet. If I do the keto diet for 2 years, am I going to be cured of schizophrenia? Well, no. Might put your schizophrenia into remission. That'll be awesome. You might be tremendously more metabolically and mentally healthy. That'll be amazing. But you're still going to have some work to do to maintain that. You can't just like go back to your old ways. And
there's no finish line.
There's no finish line, and there's no I'm done. I can do whatever I want now with diet, with exercise, with sleep, with purpose, and like I can just give up on all of that and eat a crappy diet and stop exercising, and you can't do that. So by definition, a cure means you can stop the treatment and the illness doesn't come back. With metabolic treatments, I consider metabolic treatments things like diet, exercise, good sleep, stress reduction practices. Those are metabolic treatments. If somebody regains their health using those strategies and then stops the treatment, their health is going to go to shit again. So that's not a cure. That's the main reason I don't use the word cure.
You just bought yourself some more time.
That's not a cure. You achieved some health, but you're gonna have to keep it up. And again, it's not burdensome. I grew up as somebody who hated exercise, didn't follow a diet, didn't need to follow a diet. I ate whatever I wanted. Wasn't overweight by definition. I quickly became metabolically unhealthy. I had my struggles with mental problems as well. And so I had all sorts of problems, but I technically was not overweight. And so I didn't have to exercise and didn't have to do a diet. I am a totally different person now. And some people will hear me say that, like, you mean I have to keep it up? You mean I have to keep up the exercise and the diet? Oh my God, that sucks. What I'm here to tell those people is I know that might seem really burdensome right now in the place you're at.
In the place you're at now, yeah.
But I am here to tell you, as somebody who's been where a lot of those people have been, you will want to keep it up. Because you have an entirely new life.
An entirely new body.
Entirely new body, mind, spirit, all of it. Everything feels better. Everything is better when you're actually alive. Your world is alive. It has energy. It's in full color. And when you lose your mental or metabolic health, it goes into grayscale. It becomes blurred. Everything's just a chore. You almost don't feel alive. Sometimes you wish you weren't. The quote unquote sacrifices you have to make, diet, exercise, all that other stuff, after 2 years, they are no longer sacrifices.
It's your new way of being.
It is your new way of being, and there is no other way to be, because whenever you stop them, and everybody does, including myself, would go on vacations. I don't need to exercise. I'm going to eat all the shit food that everybody else is eating.
Let go of the reins
Yeah, it's
bit.
vacation. Yeah. It's vacation. Come on. After a few days of doing that, I start feeling like crap.
Yep.
Absolute crap. And then I'm like craving, not craving to exercise per se, not craving a different diet per se. I mean, the shitty food tastes really good. So there's a part of me that recognizes that tastes really good. What I crave is to feel alive again, to feel better again, to have my mind back, to have my motivation back, to have my good sleep back. That's what I crave. And I know the path to getting that is diet and exercise and sleep and all of the other stuff. And so I know those are my tools to get back to that healthy place.
That's the part of this journey that I love the most. And when this happens, when it's happened in my life, and I know it will happen again as I continue to grow and evolve and optimize, but especially in people who have not yet experienced that, you don't know how good feels. Up to that point, whatever physical, internal, external experiences, challenges you've been going through, you have not yet been able to experience anything else. So therefore, there is no alternative. But the moment you do get that alternative, you get that first dopamine rush, you lose that first 3 pounds, you go up a weight in the gym, whatever that marker is for you, internally or externally, or maybe a little bit of both, there's a knowing that shifts. And you can never not unknow that. And then when you do deviate from that and you go back to maybe old habits that don't currently serve the new you you're working on, you're on vacation and you get away from the routine or the choices you've been making lately, you know. It's like when you're a little kid, you know, it's like you begin to develop this sense of right or wrong. You do something wrong, your parents scold you, punish you. You do something right, you get praise. You have this knowing now that we cannot unknow. And that, I think, is probably what I'm most hopeful for in people. That is the biggest marker for success, that once you get that, I feel like you're set in a lot of ways, because you will always have some form of like a true north, of a relatability to what good really feels like. Which brings me to kind of getting towards the end. This so far for me has been probably one of the most powerful conversations I've had this year in a long time. And I could really spend a lot more time with you. But as I really look at the time, I want to make sure I hit a couple more things. What we're kind of getting to here is more this qualitative aspect of life and qualitative aspect of your brain energy theory and science. Your brain energy theory also states something more on the qualitative side of science. Relationships, love, having meaning and purpose in life, and stress levels. You can isolate any one of these factors and see that it's been found to increase risk for both metabolic and mental disorders. What are you finding? What does the new science say? What are you here to say about meaning and purpose in life? Or are we just finally kind of recognizing something in old science? Like, no duh. Like, having meaning and purpose in life is going to yield a healthier human being.
You know, I think a lot of people, it's common sense, philosophers, poets, religions, all sorts of people, right, have written about this for millennia.
Stoics.
Millennia. It's nothing new. Nothing new here, folks. The fact that those things relate to quote unquote real illnesses is what's kind of new. People, again, Western medicine makes the assumption that a heart attack is a metabolic problem in the heart. The arteries lining it specifically, usually, and usually somehow is related to a plaque building up, and that might be related to cholesterol levels. That's the simplistic mindset for a lot of people.
Physically what's happening, or what?
That's a heart attack.
Happen, yeah.
So where do we intervene? We got to lower those cholesterol levels. That'll prevent all heart attacks. Well, That's really naive and stupid. It just is. Sadly, there are cardiologists, leading cardiologists at Ivy League institutions who say that. If we just lower everyone's cholesterol levels enough, that'll get rid of all heart attacks. Well, number one, you're never going to get rid of all heart attacks. People are going to die. And guess what they're going to die of? The heart is such an essential organ. You can actually live without a lot of your brain, believe it or not. People can be in vegetative states. Major swaths of their brain are dead.
And still exist.
And you're still technically alive because your heart's beating. You can lose entire limbs. You don't need those to stay, quote unquote, alive. The heart's just something that essential. That pumping the essential ingredients for metabolism, pumping oxygen, pumping food. That is essential for life because that is what metabolism requires. So, but people who have this simplistic view of what a heart attack is, diet, cholesterol, done, really are, anybody who says that or thinks that is just oblivious and unaware of a tremendous amount of science saying, no,
just isolating a couple puzzle pieces, right?
Yeah. And so, the obvious other puzzle pieces for any of your listeners who might be thinking, well, Chris Palmer, what the hell are you talking about? That is true. It's really not true. So smoking cigarettes. Smoking cigarettes causes heart attacks, folks. It's a metabolic poison. Guess what it poisons? It poisons mitochondria. That is why smoking cigarettes causes heart attacks. Smoking cigarettes also has been highly associated. It's a risk factor for essentially all mental disorders too. Oh, gee, what do you know? Isn't that interesting? It's also, smoking cigarettes also doubles your risk for developing type 2 diabetes. God, how the hell would that happen? Connect the dots, and then it all makes sense. So,
or before you even get to connecting the dots, just look at the processes happening that actually connect the dots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at the biology that you can connect. Smoking cigarettes poisons mitochondria. Mitochondrial poisoning can result in mental and metabolic disorders. So back to your question about purpose in life. So purpose in life becomes a little more vague in kind of the science because it's hard to...
More subjective.
So we have population studies showing a correlation. So we have population studies showing that people who lack purpose in life are more likely to have mental disorders and metabolic disorders.
Wow, but I also believe that, yeah.
The challenge with correlational studies is you can't prove causation with that. The challenge with this particular line of research is that we cannot do a randomized controlled trial of 1,000 human beings and take 500 of them and ensure they have a purpose in life and make them feel good about that purpose in life. And then take another 500 human beings and destroy their purpose.
No purpose
in
for you.
life and make sure they don't have a purpose. There are ways to do that. You could take people prisoner and put them in a prison to be slaughtered. The Nazis did that. That can decimate human health pretty quickly.
But also look at like Viktor Frankl in the same circumstance.
Absolutely. So you can be a metabolically healthy person and somebody can take away all your purpose in life. They can slaughter your family right in front of your eyes. Take away anyone you would want to live for. They can humiliate and denigrate you. They can take away everything you've worked for and put you somewhere where you're waiting to be killed. It's hard to imagine that person maintaining their mental or metabolic health under those circumstances. So we can't do that randomized controlled trial, but we have things like Nazi Germany in the concentration camps to
we have
call upon
unfortunate examples
as lines of evidence to support it. But Essentially, the way I think about it is, you have to go to a bigger picture. So now I have to really speculate. And I'm going to speculate. So could I be wrong? Of course I could. But this kind of makes sense to me, at least. Human beings are meant to live in groups of people. We are hardwired to live in groups of people. That's why human beings, for the most part, don't go out into the woods and live alone. Mm-hmm. When they do go out into the woods and live alone, they almost always have brain disorders that we call mental illness. And that brain disorder is interfering with this hardwired biological drive to stay with other humans. We are not the only species that lives in groups. Most species of mobile organisms live in groups. Ants live in groups. Birds flock together. Dogs, wolves run in packs. Yeah. A lot of animals are hardwired to stay together because it confers a survival advantage and a reproductive advantage. And those two things are essential for life. Mm-hmm. Life doesn't go on if all of the living organisms just venture off onto their own and don't give a shit about each other and don't really want to stay with other species, with others of the same species. Mm-hmm. So we are a species. We are hardwired to want to be with other humans. And the speculation part, so that's not speculation. I guess it is. Like, how do we prove that? It's observation. It seems pretty obvious and commonsensical. But how do you do a study that I can cite?
And like polling, right? It have to be.
I'm not aware of a study published in a journal that I can cite that says this is a fact. But I don't think we need that. It's kind of like saying breathing is a fact. I don't need a study in a journal to tell me that breathing is a requirement. So why purpose in life? I believe that as part of this innate hardwiring, that we are hardwired to find our place in the group. That it's not just as simple as stay in physical location to other humans. It's more complex than that. It's actually, we are hardwired to engage with other humans as part of a larger group. And those groups can be families, schools, towns, countries. We have lots of groups and lots of layers and hierarchies of different groups. But we are hardwired to not only be in the group, but engage with the group. And that engagement requires a purpose. Mm-hmm. 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 And if you don't have a purpose, you quickly lose your metabolic and mental health. And are there examples of that in our society? Absolutely. Sending people to nursing homes. Your purpose in life is to die. That's why we're sending you there. It's time for you to die.
Waiting room for death.
But you're not dead yet. People who are severely and extremely disabled, severe brain injuries that render them paralyzed from the neck down, unable to speak. They are probably losing much of their purpose. Does that mean they can't find a purpose? Of course, they could. They could. And some have. But the overwhelming majority don't. When that biological drive for purpose, for engagement with the group is not being met, I believe it drives a stress response. And it is that stress response that causes both metabolic and mental health problems. The organism goes on high alert. And the organism goes on high alert because it's like, whoa, you're not around the group anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're not engaging with the group in a useful way. The group doesn't want you. The group doesn't need you. Nobody needs you. Now you've lost your purpose. That drives a biological stress response that your ability to survive and reproduce are severely compromised. And because your ability to survive and reproduce are severely compromised, you need to do something. The stress response is trying to get you to do something. When people are stressed and unable to do anything, they end up going into this helpless state and essentially are preparing for death. They don't get out of bed. They become severely depressed or they become suicidal. They take the initiative to just end it prematurely. Why prolong this suffering? I'm destined to die. So again, I mean, it starts getting really spiritual and philosophical and speculative. That would be my take.
I have to have you back. This is leaving me personally on such a cliffhanger of qualitative aspects to health, to mental health. So again, thank you. As I get into my final question here, I just want to say I was just so personally enthralled in that definition, that description of the qualitative aspect to health and why it all matters. And the way that you broke it down in such exquisite, dark detail, sometimes that's life. There is darkness. Is the entire reason why I am here doing this show, why we are here together, especially the part where you're talking about people on their deathbed, having purpose, not having purpose, losing purpose in life, and just the effects that can have on the physical self. Those words right there, ever forward, were the words of my late father, passed away from, this Sunday will be 18 years from ALS. And to be bedside with him and to look into his eyes and know up until his literal final breaths, he had purpose and meaning in his life, I think is the greatest thing. I won't pass my goals on to everybody. I won't say everyone, but it is the greatest thing that I am striving for, to have such clarity and fulfillment and purpose and passion in my life that as I lay on my deathbed, or maybe it's just a beautiful moment, I go to sleep and I don't wake up. Either way, to have that purpose in my life is why I'm here having this conversation with you and expanding my education, my vocabulary, and sharing it with the audience to hopefully do the same thing. That is what I mean by living a life ever forward. I always ask my guests the same final question. What do those two words mean to you? When you hear that, how does it land on you here today? How do you live a life ever forward, Chris? How can anyone, through the lens of your work in this conversation we've had today, take a step forward, move ever forward in their life?
You know, I have had some really horrible, dark times in my life. And I overcame them. And so on a personal level, ever forward means I need to just keep moving, keep taking care of my mental and metabolic health, live the best life possible. But At this point, so much of my work, the book, the theory, my advocating for it, trying to educate people on it, the ever forward now is about the tens of millions of people who are trapped in the same shitty place I had been. And trying to help them just see a little glimmer of a light. That there's a way out of the hell you're in. There's a way out. And help them develop a plan to start moving toward that light.
You're here now clearly because you have made a series of decisions to do just that. And so I'm very thankful that you are here today. And more than that, I'm thankful that you've taken these experiences both personally and professionally to pour into such an incredible piece of work here in Brain Energy. All this will be put in the video notes and show notes for everybody to check out. If you are a human being, if you are a clinician, if you are a coach, if you are a parent, if you are anyone and care about any facet of today's conversation, please do yourself a favor, pour yourself into this book. Where can everybody go if they want to connect with you right here, right now, to learn more about you? Again, everything will be linked for everybody, but where you hang out most online, where can they dive more into your work?
The two websites are probably helpful. So brainenergy.com. We're developing a newsletter. We're going to share more information, practical tips,
Amazing.
Success stories, other things that people will be able to engage in. So brainenergy.com. I'm really hoping to start a mental health movement based on all this work.
I'm with you.
I'm kind of crazy and audacious. But so they can get involved there. And for people who want to learn more about some of my specific individual clinical work and or research, you can find me at chrispalmermd.com. I'm active on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Amazing. Well, Chris, thank you again so much.